The Obesity Code by Fung, MD. Picture this. You're sitting in a doctor's office and you notice your physician is carrying extra weight. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Here's someone who's dedicated their entire adult life to understanding how the human body works. They've survived medical school, residency, and continue pushing themselves with incredible discipline. They have access to every piece of health research ever published, and they know the golden rule backwards and forwards: eat less, move more. Yet they're struggling with their weight, just like millions of other people around the world. There's something deeply wrong with this picture, and one particular doctor couldn't stop thinking about it. His name is Fung, a kidney specialist working in Toronto, and his obsession with this paradox led him to write a book that's been quietly turning our understanding of weight loss upside down. The Obesity Code has sold millions of copies, not because it offers some trendy new diet, but because it exposes a simple truth that's been staring us in the face for decades. Dr. Fung never planned to become a weight loss expert. His days were spent in the sobering world of kidney failure treatment, watching patient after patient roll through his doors with the same devastating story. The primary culprit behind their kidney failure? Type 2 diabetes. And what was driving that diabetes? Almost always, obesity. He was like a firefighter showing up after the building had already burned down, treating the final, tragic stage of a disease that had been developing for decades. He wasn't solving anything, he was just managing the wreckage. This uncomfortable truth sent him on a quest, digging deep into the history and science of weight gain. What he found was shocking: a half-century of fundamentally flawed advice. The guidance we've all been following, the same advice he'd been giving his own patients, wasn't just ineffective, it was completely wrong. Today we're going to walk through Dr. Fung's discoveries together. By the time we're done, you'll understand the single most powerful hormonal switch that controls your weight, and it has absolutely nothing to do with calorie counting. You'll see why traditional diet and exercise approaches are set up to fail for most people. And perhaps most importantly, you'll walk away with a fresh perspective, built on both ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science, that can actually put you back in the driver's seat. This goes way beyond just losing weight. It's about finally understanding how your body really works. Let me tell you about an experiment that changed everything. In 1944, right in the middle of World War II, a scientist named Dr. Ancel Keys launched what became known as the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. His goal was straightforward but grim: understand what starvation does to people, so he could help the millions suffering in war-torn Europe. He recruited 36 healthy young men who volunteered to be guinea pigs. For 6 months, these men had their daily calories slashed in half, down to about 500 calories. Which honestly isn't that different from many popular diets today. Predictably, they lost weight. But that's not the fascinating part. The fascinating part is what happened to these men, psychologically and physically. Food became their entire world. They dreamed about it constantly, spent hours reading cookbooks, and lost interest in everything else in life. Their bodies started falling apart. They were freezing all the time, even during summer. Their strength dropped by 21%. Their hearts started beating slower and slower. And here's the kicker: their metabolism, the rate at which their bodies burned energy, crashed by a staggering 40%. Think about what was actually happening here. Their bodies weren't stupid. When faced with drastically reduced fuel coming in, their bodies did the only logical thing to survive. They slashed the energy going out. It was simple survival mathematics, the body balancing its energy budget. But here's the part that really matters. When the study ended and these men could finally eat normally again, they didn't just return to their original weight. They gained back everything they'd lost, plus extra. Their bodies, having just survived what felt like a famine, were now desperately hoarding every calorie, storing it as fat insurance in case another crisis hit. This experiment from over 70 years ago revealed something crucial that we've been ignoring ever since. Your body doesn't just passively accept calorie restriction. It fights back hard. And this is where the first crack appears in the whole eat less, move more philosophy. Dr. Fung calls this the calorie deception. The formula seems so logical. Calories in minus calories out equals body fat. It's like basic math, but it's built on a completely false assumption that calories in and calories out are independent of each other. They're absolutely not. As the Minnesota experiment proved, when you slash your calories in, your body automatically and dramatically cuts your calories out. Your metabolism slows down, you feel exhausted, and you're constantly cold. You're simply not burning the same amount of energy anymore. This is exactly why calorie restriction diets almost always fail. Sure, you lose some weight initially, but then your body adapts. Your metabolism slows to match your reduced intake. You hit that dreaded plateau, and you feel absolutely terrible, hungry, tired, miserable. Eventually, when you can't take it anymore and go back to eating normally, your metabolism is still stuck in low gear. The weight comes rushing back, usually with a few bonus pounds thrown in for good measure. This isn't a willpower problem. It's a predictable biological response, plain and simple. What about the other half of the equation? Move more. Surely exercise is the answer, right? We're constantly told that we're heavier now because we're lazier than previous generations. We drive everywhere instead of walking, watch television instead of working in fields. It sounds perfectly reasonable, but the evidence just doesn't back it up. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer tribes, like the Hadza people in Tanzania, who live incredibly physically demanding lives, show they burn roughly the same number of calories per day as a typical office worker in America or Europe. How is that even possible? Their bodies have become remarkably efficient. The calories outside of the equation is far more complicated than we've been led to believe. Exercise only accounts for a tiny fraction of our total energy expenditure, often less than 5%. The vast majority, over 95%, goes to our basal metabolic rate, all those background processes like breathing, thinking, and keeping our hearts pumping. When we exercise more, our bodies often compensate in two sneaky ways. First, it makes us hungrier, so we end up increasing our calories in. There's a reason we call it working up an appetite. Second, we might unconsciously reduce our non-exercise activity. If you go for a long run in the morning, you're probably more likely to take the elevator instead of the stairs later. Your body cleverly maintains its energy balance. This explains why large-scale studies show that increasing exercise has a surprisingly minimal effect on long-term weight loss. Don't get me wrong, exercise is incredibly beneficial for your health in countless ways, but it's not an effective weight loss tool on its own. As Dr. Fung puts it, diet is Batman, and exercise is Robin. Diet is doing 95% of the heavy lifting. You simply cannot outrun a bad diet no matter how hard you try. So if eating less doesn't work, and moving more doesn't work, what are we missing? This brings us to the central revelation of the Obesity Code. The problem isn't how many calories we're eating. The problem is what those calories are doing to our hormones. Obesity, Dr. Fung argues, isn't a caloric imbalance. It's a hormonal imbalance. And the star of this hormonal drama is insulin. Most of us think about insulin in connection with diabetes. But insulin's main job in your body is acting as a storage hormone. When we eat, especially carbohydrates, our blood sugar rises. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin. Insulin's mission is to grab that sugar from your blood and shuttle it into your cells for energy. But what happens when your cells are already topped off? Insulin helps store the excess energy. First, it stores it as glycogen in your liver, like a readily accessible refrigerator. But that refrigerator has limited space. Once it's packed full, insulin takes any leftover energy and starts creating new fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. This new fat gets stored in your fat cells, which are basically like a deep freezer with unlimited storage capacity. So here's the simple version. When insulin is high, you're in storage mode. You're building fat. When insulin is low, you're in burning mode. You're pulling energy out of storage and burning fat. This process is completely normal. It happens every single day. We eat, insulin rises, we store energy. We stop eating, insulin falls, we burn energy. As long as the storing and burning phases stay balanced, our weight remains stable. The obesity problem, then, is fundamentally a problem of too much insulin. Chronically elevated insulin levels are constantly sending your body the message to store fat, store fat, store fat. It never receives the signal to burn fat. How do we know this is actually true? Dr. Fung presents the most straightforward proof imaginable. He says, I can make you fat. Actually, I can make anybody fat. How? By prescribing insulin. And he's absolutely right. Patients with type 1 diabetes, whose bodies can't produce insulin, will lose weight uncontrollably, regardless of how much they eat. But when they receive insulin injections to survive, significant weight gain is a very common side effect. Similarly, in type 2 diabetes patients, studies consistently demonstrate that the more insulin they're given to control their blood sugar, the more weight they gain. One study showed patients gaining an average of 19 pounds, even while cutting their daily calories by 300. It wasn't the calories driving their weight gain, it was the insulin. This reveals a fundamental flaw in how we've been thinking about obesity. We thought overeating made us fat, but the hormonal perspective flips that completely around. Getting fat causes us to overeat. Think of it like a thermostat in your house. Your body has a body-set weight, a weight it considers normal and wants to defend. High insulin levels turn that thermostat up. When your thermostat is set to 200 pounds, but you currently weigh 180, your body thinks it's underweight. It'll do absolutely everything in its power to get you back to 200 pounds. It'll make you hungrier so you eat more, and it'll slow down your metabolism so you burn less. This is why dieting feels like a constant battle against your own body. You're literally fighting your thermostat. The only way to win long-term isn't to fight the system, but to change the thermostat setting. The question isn't how to eat fewer calories. The real question is, how do we lower our insulin? The first and most obvious answer is reducing the foods that spike insulin the most. At the top of that list are refined carbohydrates, and especially sugar. We've been warned about sugar for ages, but the Obesity Code explains exactly why it's uniquely dangerous. Table sugar, or sucrose, is made from two smaller sugar molecules, glucose and fructose. Glucose raises our blood sugar and triggers an immediate insulin response. That's the part we all know. The hidden danger is fructose. Unlike glucose, which can be used by almost any cell in your body, fructose can only be processed by your liver. When we consume too much fructose, especially in concentrated forms like the high fructose corn syrup in sodas and processed foods, it overwhelms the liver. The liver's response is converting that fructose into fat. This leads to fatty liver disease. A fatty liver is like an already stuffed suitcase. When the next meal comes along and insulin tries to push more energy into the liver pushes back. It's already full. The body's response to this resistance? Produce even more insulin to force the job done. This is how insulin resistance is born. So sugar delivers a devastating one-two punch. The glucose spikes your insulin immediately. The fructose, over time, creates insulin resistance in your liver, leading to chronically higher insulin levels long-term. It's not just the immediate spike, it's the long-term damage to your entire system. This also helps explain the paradox of traditional Asian diets. For generations, many Asian populations ate diets high in white rice, a refined carbohydrate, but had extremely low obesity rates. The key difference? Their sugar and fructose intake was incredibly low. Once sugar consumption started rising in those countries, their obesity and diabetes rates absolutely exploded. What about protein? The original Atkins diet suggested replacing carbs with fat and protein, but many people, terrified of fat, gravitated toward high-protein, low-fat diets built on skinless chicken breasts and egg white omelets. The problem? Certain proteins, especially dairy and processed meats, can trigger a significant insulin response, sometimes rivaling refined carbohydrates. This is due to hormones in our gut, called incretins, which signal the pancreas to release insulin in anticipation of incoming food. So replacing insulin-spiking carbs with insulin-spiking proteins doesn't actually solve the core problem. Dietary fat, on the other hand, has the smallest effect on insulin levels. Natural, healthy fats aren't the enemy we've been told they are. For 50 years, we were taught to fear fat, especially saturated fat, based on what's now the thoroughly discredited diet heart hypothesis. But large-scale modern studies have shown there's no significant link between dietary saturated fat and heart disease. In fact, the low-fat craze led us to replace natural fats with highly processed vegetable oils and trans fats, which were far more harmful, and to fill the flavor gap with sugar and refined carbohydrates, the very things driving up our insulin. So the first step to lowering insulin is changing what you eat. Cut back on added sugars and refined grains, moderate your protein intake. And don't fear natural, healthy fats. Eat real, unprocessed foods. The toxicity isn't in the carbohydrate, protein, or fat itself. It's in the processing. But this is only half the battle. This part helps you lose weight in the short term. The long-term problem, the reason Oprah regained all her weight, the reason most diets ultimately fail, is insulin resistance. So how do you actually break the cycle of insulin resistance? Resistance in any biological system is caused by two things: high levels and constant exposure. Think about antibiotic resistance. If you constantly expose bacteria to an antibiotic, they eventually develop resistance. The exact same principle applies to insulin. If your insulin levels are always elevated, your body becomes resistant. Changing what you eat addresses the high levels. But what about the constant exposure? This brings us to the forgotten half of the equation: when you eat. In the 1960s, before the obesity epidemic really took off, most people ate 3 meals a day. No snacks. This created natural daily periods where insulin levels would fall very low, especially overnight. These low insulin periods were crucial because they prevented the development of insulin resistance. But starting in the 1970s, nutritional authorities began telling us that snacking was actually good for us, that eating 5 or 6 small meals a day would stoke our metabolism. This was a catastrophic mistake. From 1977 to 2003, the average number of times Americans ate per day jumped from 3 to almost 6. We started eating from the moment we woke up until the moment we went to sleep. The result? Our insulin levels never had a chance to come down. We were stuck in fat storage mode all day long. This constant, high-level exposure to insulin created the perfect recipe for severe insulin resistance. The solution, then, is beautifully simple. To break the cycle of insulin resistance, you need to create periods where your insulin is very low. And since all foods raise insulin at least a little, the only way to get your insulin truly low is to not eat at all. The answer is fasting. Now, this isn't about starvation. Starvation is involuntary and uncontrolled. Fasting is the voluntary, controlled abstinence from food for health or spiritual reasons. And it's one of the oldest and most powerful healing traditions in human history. When you fast, your body simply switches its fuel source. Instead of burning energy from the food you just ate, it starts burning the stored food energy you've been carrying around on your body, your fat. Dr. Fung tackles all the myths we've heard about fasting head-on. Will it burn your muscle? No, the body isn't that foolish. It stores energy as fat for a reason. It'll burn through that fat before it starts breaking down functional tissue. Studies show that growth hormone levels actually increase during fasting, which helps preserve lean muscle mass. Will fasting put you into starvation mode and wreck your metabolism? No, actually the opposite happens. Studies show that during short-term fasts, metabolism doesn't decrease, it increases. Your body releases adrenaline, giving you more energy, presumably to help you hunt for food. This is completely different from the metabolic slowdown caused by chronic calorie restriction. Intermittent fasting, creating regular, consistent periods of not eating, is the tool that directly attacks insulin resistance. It breaks the cycle. It gives your body a rest from the constant demand to produce insulin. It allows your insulin levels to fall, which in turn improves your insulin sensitivity. And when your insulin levels finally come down, your body's set weight, your thermostat, can finally be adjusted lower. This is the missing piece of the puzzle. It explains why all diets seem to work initially, then fail. They address what to eat, but they completely ignore when to eat. By combining both strategies, eating a diet of real, unprocessed foods, and incorporating intermittent fasting, you can address both the high insulin levels and the underlying insulin resistance. You're finally treating the whole disease. The Obesity Code isn't a diet book. It's a framework for understanding. It shows us that our bodies aren't simple machines, but complex, self-regulating systems. It frees us from the tyranny of calorie counting and the guilt of failed willpower. It demonstrates that the power to regain our health doesn't lie in some new, magic pill, but in ancient wisdom that's been with us all along. Eat real food, and give your body a chance to rest. What I find so compelling about Dr. Fung's work in the Obesity Code is how it completely shifts the entire conversation around weight. For decades, we've treated obesity as a character flaw, a problem of gluttony and laziness. The advice to eat less, move more carries an implicit judgment. If you're not losing weight, you're just not trying hard enough. This book dismantles that entire framework. It reframes obesity not as a personal failure, but as hormonal dysregulation. Your body isn't broken. It's just following a set of hormonal signals that are dialed too high. This is an incredibly empowering message. It means the struggle isn't your fault. You're not fighting a lack of willpower. You're fighting your own biology, which has been hijacked by a modern food environment and misguided advice. Understanding that insulin is the thermostat, controlling your body's set weight, gives you a clear target. The goal is no longer the vague and frustrating task of eating less. The goal is clear and specific: lower your insulin. And the book provides a two-pronged approach to do exactly that, which is what makes it so complete. First, change what you eat. Move away from processed foods, sugars, and refined grains that constantly spike your insulin. This is advice many diets share, and it's a crucial first step. But the second part is the real game changer. Change when you eat. The introduction of intermittent fasting as a therapeutic tool is what elevates this book beyond a simple diet plan. It addresses the root problem of insulin resistance, the very thing that makes long-term weight loss feel impossible. By intentionally creating periods of low insulin, we give our bodies the chance to reset and regain sensitivity. It's not about constant deprivation. It's about creating a natural rhythm of feasting and fasting, something our ancestors did for millennia. Life is meant to be celebrated with food, but those celebrations need to be balanced with periods of rest. So what can you actually do with this information today? You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Start small. Here are 2 simple actions you can take this week. First, focus on what you drink. For the next 7 days, make a conscious effort to eliminate all sugar-sweetened beverages. No sodas, no sweetened teas, no fruit juices. Replace them with water, sparkling water, or unsweetened tea and coffee. This one change can dramatically reduce your sugar and fructose intake and begin lowering the insulin load on your body. Second, experiment with timing. You don't have to jump into a multi-day fast. Just try extending your natural overnight fast by 1 hour. If you normally eat breakfast at 7, try waiting until 8. If you can do that comfortably, maybe try 9 the next day. This simple act of creating a slightly longer period without eating is a gentle first step toward reintroducing your body to the fat-burning state of low insulin. That's the beauty of the Obesity Code. It provides a powerful unifying theory, but its application can be as simple or as comprehensive as you need it to be. It's about understanding the why behind the weight, and then using that knowledge to make smart, sustainable changes. That was a summary of the Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. We've journeyed through the core principles today, but I want to be honest with you. A summary can give you the map, but it can't replace the experience of the journey itself. The real power of this book is in the way Dr. Fung connects the dots, the way one idea builds upon the next, until the whole picture becomes crystal clear. This summary is your guide to decide if this book deserves a place in your life. If the ideas we've explored today, that weight is hormonal, not caloric, and that timing is as important as ingredients, have sparked something in you, then I genuinely encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts. It's about fundamentally changing how you see your own body and the food you put into it. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this exploration valuable, it would mean the world to me if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another transformative book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's continue this journey of learning and growing together.